Really just a horrifying story out of Kansas. A judge is under fire after calling teen victims in a sex crime case the aggressors. They are 13 and 14 years old. This is the judge, Michael Gibbons, made the comment while sentencing a 67-year-old man to prison. The man had been convicted of soliciting nude photos through Facebook from the two girls, sisters, again, 13 and 14. According to a court transcript, the judge said he found the victims were, quote, more an aggressor than a participant in the criminal conduct. They were certainly selling things monetarily. Prosecutors say Raymond Soden is at fault for what he did. They say no matter what, it was wrong to blame the victims.
I mean, these are children. They're victims. I mean, this should not happen to any children. It's tough for any child to have to face someone who's done that to them.
That is the county attorney. Well, after the comments, the judge handed down a 5-year sentence, significantly lower. State guidelines call for almost triple that. HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson back with me to talk about this. Also joining us, psychotherapist Robbie Ludwig. Robbie, they're not even of age to consent for this judge to say they knew what they were doing and they were getting money for it. It's just bizarre.
It is, and that is the way these abusers think. They minimize, they justify, they distort, they deny. They have no insight. And in their mind, they truly do believe that the victim somehow is responsible for what's going on. And they are unable to see the whole picture. They really see themselves in a very distorted way. And this judge was very articulate in giving insight into the distortions of his mind and how he operates.
And Joey, the judge even saying, look, he's of an advanced age. He's 67. He's not 107, not that that would matter, but these girls can't even consent, much less are they the quote-unquote aggressors.
Yeah, very true, Susan. Good to see you. And, of course, Dr. Robbie, you as well. You know, look, what the judge did here, I think, is very problematic. And it's problematic for a number of reasons. The first of which, as you pointed out, Susan, you know, the standard range is even 13 years or more. And he gives 5 years, 9 months. And so what you want in a system, and the reason there are guidelines to begin with, and I know every case needs to be evaluated on the merits. You can't look at one and say it's the same as the other. But the reason that there are guidelines is so that there are not these gross disparities, so that justice is even-handed. And when you look at this, it's hard to justify. The second basis for which you look at it and you determine what are you talking about, Judge, is when you're talking about 13 and 14-year-olds as aggressors, you know, you don't even have the ability to consent. We're talking about, you know, we're sending these nude photos and you're blaming the victim? Really? I mean, I understand, and to be fair, part of what the judge was talking about is in order to deviate from the guideline, you have to make an aggressor finding or a participant finding. In English, that means that you have to determine that the victim is an aggressor or a participant. That gets you out of the guideline. But when you're talking about minors, to suggest that they're aggressors or that they were participants, when you're 67 years old and you pretty much, you know, wanted your way with them and were manipulating them, I think it's too much to explain, and I think the judge has some answering to do here.
Absolutely. And Robbie, he knew their ages. It's not like he thought they were older. He knew they were 13 and 14. Does this, in your opinion, set us back? Does it set us back in time that the judge seems to be siding with this guy and not saying, look, these girls are victims?
I really don't understand. That's a legal issue, why the judge gave this man such a short sentence. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, because clearly this was a man who chose young girls who could be manipulated. And what we know about the teen brain is that their frontal lobes aren't even fully developed yet, which means that they're not able to always see the consequences for their actions. So that's why they can't be held responsible. And they're very susceptible to peer pressure. So this is a very disturbing sentence. I don't understand it. Perhaps Joey can give us insight, but maybe it's just a tendency to blame anything that seems sexual on a woman, and that needs to be addressed, and the judge needs to be aware of.
Good point, Robbie. And in this case, really, kids, Joey, and I can't imagine their sisters, them to hear from the judge that it was their fault in a way. So they're 13 and 14. They've been through this traumatic experience, and now they're hearing, although he did get 5 years, you're part of the problem.
You know, what twists my head and spins it round and round and round, and you know, not to be hypocritical, because as a defense attorney, obviously you want the best thing you can for your client, and you make the arguments for your client. You know, Your Honor, give them less, and here's why. But the reason why I'm having a hard time here is because you can't, just as a matter of law, blame the victim when the victims can't even consent. You're not even at the age of consent. If these were adult participants and the judge made a finding, my analysis would be different. But you're a 13 and a 14-year-old, and the judge says to the prosecutor, they're the aggressors. And the prosecutor says, I'm sorry, Judge, what did you say? Could you explain that? And he reinforces. So it's not like the judge can now say, oh, I misspoke, I didn't mean what I said. You know, judges look for ways to deviate from the guidelines. If you want to deviate, say, you know what, this person who's 67 has some mental frailties he didn't understand. He's 67, he's done some redeeming things for the community, I'll give him this sentence. But to blame the victims here, I just think it's very difficult for me to justify or otherwise explain. It's just not a notion of justice that is appropriate.
And finally,
and
Joe,
even if a child is young and seductive, you have to be the adult in the room and know that it's wrong. It doesn't matter what a child is doing. There has to be the adult in the room that sets those boundaries and sets those limits, no matter what.
Absolutely. In the room, on the internet, I mean, it's a systemic problem that seems to not be going away. Joey Jackson, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.